Coming up next, Scarlett Cochran's an attorney, financial expert, entrepreneur. Her career as a lawyer, she worked on behalf of everyday people at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, FDIC, and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. She now has a monster YouTube channel and a monster brand called One Big Happy Life that I absolutely love. She is always positive, has a brand new book out talking about, you know what, we're here to stack Benjamins, but Benjamins are just a fuel for something much bigger. And man, she's always got great stories. And Scarlett Cochran's here. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here.
I am super happy you're with us. Congratulations on a great book. This had to be difficult. I mean, just the process of writing a book. I mean, were you prepared?
I was not prepared. Now, I have wanted to be an author my whole life. I thought it would be speculative fiction, vampires, werewolves, maybe some like high fantasy. I never imagined that I was going to write a personal finance book, especially because I didn't become a law professor. So I never expected to publish, but I've always wanted to write something. And in my mind, the process of writing a book involves sitting in your log cabin by the lake with the idyllic music playing and like the birds chirping. Exactly. Right. And smiling at your own cleverness as you write. When in reality, for me, it was literally rolling around on the ground crying because I spent hours staring at a blank screen. It was so painful.
It is. Well, the good news is you did write some horror stories in here. There's a story about a roach that we'll tell later. Like you've got some true. So it doesn't have to be vampires. It could be credit card debt and shady mortgages.
Absolutely. But the point of the book is to also show that those traditional personal finance boogeymen aren't actually that scary once you shine a light on them.
Yeah. Oh, no, easily. But before we get to all that, I need to talk about you because you spend a whole section of the book kind of helping people kick excuses to the curb. And I just have to say, just doing a little bit of homework on you. If anybody can tell people to kick excuses to the curb, Scarlett, it's got to be you. So let's walk through. You went to Yale. You put yourself through Yale Law School, which for anybody is not easy, but you had 2 kids at the time?
One kid. I had the other one later after a divorce. Yeah.
Yeah, but you had, so you're a single mother putting yourself through Yale Law School with a baby.
Yeah, well, by that time, she was a little bit older. So if we go back a little bit, I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18 years old. And then I started dating a fellow Marine, and it got serious, and I became pregnant with my daughter, Alexis. And 3 months into that pregnancy, my fiance at the time decided that he didn't want to get married and he didn't want to have a baby. So there I was, 19 years old, single teen mom, active duty Marine, and 9/11 happens. So active duty Marine during a time of war, making less than $25,000 a year. And at the time, I had nothing to my name but my clothing and a boombox. So I didn't even have a driver's license when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. So that all happened before Yale Law.
You're a Marine and you don't have to have a driver's license. You're a badass who can't legally drive.
Yeah, well, I grew up in New York City, so what do you need a driver's license for? There's public transportation.
True. That's true. You've worked in a lot of financial roles as well. You worked for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. You worked for FDIC, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I have so many questions about all those roles because I'm fascinated by them. We had Sheila Bair on talking about FDIC and 2007 and all the stuff that went down there. Was there anything surprising in those roles for you? Was there any particular stories that you remember from those days?
What surprised me is how much actual discrimination still happens when it comes to banking and finance and lending. I honestly was naive. I thought that stuff just didn't happen anymore. And so the overt stuff where people would say things like, well, pregnant women don't go back to work, so I can't give you a mortgage loan, even though you make enough money to qualify for it on your own. I'm like, how are people not only saying this stuff, but literally putting it in writing? 100%. Right? Like they put it in writing. Like that's insane. But also really what was really interesting too is we all assume that discrimination is something that's overt, that happens because people see people and discriminate against them. But the thing is that we bring our inherent bias when we do things like do the coding for the algorithms that make the quick decisions on credit. So it's possible for algorithms to produce different results that are statistically significantly discriminating against women and minorities. It's shocking. But if you don't look for it, you aren't able to find where the problematic parts of the code are that are discriminating on factors that don't relate directly to a buyer's ability to pay. So, for example, if someone had Googled, like in their in their search history, if they got to the application page because they were searching for a consolidation loan, right, but had looked at, say, debt, like struggling with debt or something in their search history, that could actually trigger a less desirable result when they submitted their credit application. So like a higher interest rate or a lower credit limit. And
wait a minute, just your search history.
Yeah. And like the website that you came from to apply for the thing, because, there's cookies on your browser. And so, but the thing is, those things don't correlate to your ability to repay. Yeah. And so they create these disparities, but if no one asks the question, like, why did you choose to make that a criteria? This is causing a disparate impact on minorities and women, but it's not actually related. You're not showing us that this factor actually is resulting in actually better credit decisions or fewer defaults. You're just putting it there and it's having this discriminatory effect for no good reason.
After hearing this from you, which, by the way, we could do a whole interview just on this, but I think we should get to some of the cool topics in the book. And actually, kind of as a transition that way, Scarlett, it makes me love this project even more, because the feeling I got reading the book was stop with excuses and get busy. And it sounds like what you're saying now is, listen, there's a lot of reasons. There's a system that's built against you. There's a lot of uphill battle that's going to be fought, but you still got to fight. You still got to fight. But, I mean, this makes me want to even fight harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tell my own story. And I share the fact that when I was pregnant with my daughter and I was telling people like, oh, I want to live this good life, I'm going to be able to provide for this baby, they were just looking at me like I was crazy. And if I listened to them, I would never have had my daughter. Like some people told me point blank, including my superiors in the military, that I should go have an abortion. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to have an abortion. I wanted this baby before I ever got pregnant. And so that hasn't changed. And I'm just committed to creating a beautiful life. Like, it doesn't matter what you tell me is possible. I know what I want out of my life, and I'm going to go get that. Because worse come to worse, at least at the end of my life, I can look back and say, look, I gave it everything. I gave it my all. I tried my hardest. And I just cannot help but believe that making the effort to go after the life that you want has to lead to better results than just sitting back with what the world is just willing to give you.
You have a whole segment of your book which fights a lot of these buts that people say, right? But I can't, but I can't, but I can't. You're like, nope. But I want to ask you about a couple of them specifically. One that you and I hear all the time is, I got too much debt. What do you say to people when they tell you that?
Well, I say that debt is just one part of your overall financial picture. right? And that you can both have debt and still build wealth. I say, look at your money as like a pizza with many slices, and some of your slices can go towards paying off debt, but some of your slices need to also go towards building wealth for several reasons. One, because saving is a habit. And if we build this habit that we only invest our money when it's convenient, when it's easy, when there's nothing else demanding our attention, then we are going to continue to hit periods in our life where things get harder, like say a period of unusually high inflation. And the first thing we're going to do...
That would never happen.
Right? And the first thing we're going to do is cut our investing. And people need to see investing as like brushing their teeth. It's something that you do no matter what. And because it's hard to make that up, you can always make more money over the course of your life to offset extra interest that you pay in debt. But it gets harder and harder to make up compounding because you've lost the benefit of the time aspect of building wealth the more you delay.
I love that pizza analogy, and I think I'm going to steal it from you because I do. Well, let me tell you what else I saw at Fight back when I was a financial planner, Scarlett. And I'm sure you see this too with Big Happy Life. Is when people get the debt paid off, if they haven't started saving yet, they haven't started dreaming yet, they haven't put together this full life, like they get stuck. And then they go celebrate and they buy a big screen TV on credit and they get just back into debt again.
Yep.
So I feel like your pizza analogy is beautiful because now when the debt's paid off, you're already rolling toward the bigger goals, the bigger dreams and stuff.
Exactly. And it also represents the fact that in our modern world, I think a lot of people would say, ideally, we would never have any debt. We would always have the financial resources to hit all of our other life goals and pay for things with cash, right? Let's just all agree on that, right? That would make life a little bit easier.
Sure.
But that is not the world that we live in. Right? And it takes time for us to build our finances to where we are our own insurance, where anything that happens, we have the cash, whether it's liquidating assets and liquidating investments, but we have the financial resources to cover those things at any time. It takes often, especially if you're living a balanced life, a decade, maybe 15 years to go from fresh out of school to, and now I have, let's say, $10, $15, $50,000 of cash that should I need a new roof, I can plunk down cash. It takes a long time and lots of deliberate effort. So I feel like this idea of paying off all debt, avoiding debt at all costs, it actually makes the process more onerous. It makes it harder. Exactly. Yeah. And more painful. And in reality, if we look at it as a balancing, it's something where we are working towards being in a place in our lives where we have the financial stability, the safety net, the sinking funds all put together so that we can handle whatever, but recognizing that it's going to take us time to get there. And thankfully, we have this wonderful resource called debt that allows us to use money to buy money to make our lives more comfortable.
I want to go to the other side of that equation, Scarlett, which are, you talked about, if you wait, you miss out on compounding interest. But then you meet people on the other side of the game, which is, hey, I'm 40 something, 57, 50 something, 60 something. It's too late for me. What do you say to those people?
Well, I say that I always tell them to ask themselves this question. If I were to start working on improving my finances now and changing my financial habits now, 10 years from now, will I be better or worse than if I changed nothing? And the answer is always going to be, of course, I'm going to be in a better position. And so would you rather be in a better position or a worse position? And the answer is always going to be better. So then the question becomes, okay, now let's see what's possible. What can you do? And I also don't sugarcoat it. Look, you're older. So your options, some of your options have now foreclosed. You can no longer sit there for 40 years and just put a little bit in. like you could have done if you were 20 years old. Now you're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive with your investing, not meaning what you invest in, but how much money you're putting in. So maybe you could have gotten away with $1,000 a month before, but now you're going to have to do $2,000 or $2,500. So then ask yourself the question, all right, how can I make this extra $1,500? What do I need to do? And I say, thankfully, we live in a world where there's more information out there than ever. So your ability to expand your capacity to make money has never been greater. So you just need to realize that that is available to you if you want it. And I know you do. So just get started.
I feel like this is the positive side of fear, right? Using fear that I won't get started, that I won't have enough, and using it as a weapon, like truly making fear your buddy.
Yeah. And fear is not a bad thing. Also, you can feel fear and still take the right actions that you need to take. And one of the best ways to do that is to really ground yourself in your future self, right? Connect those two people together. I know that as humans, it is not we don't naturally connect with doing good things for our future selves, right? We see that as some stranger. Oh, that's a future me problem. Yeah. But we can get better at seeing ourselves as both people at the same time, but that takes practice, right? So when you make a decision, you think, what would future me do, right? If future me has everything that I've ever wanted, what would they have needed to do in order to, like when they were me, in order to have that? And just connect with future you on a day-to-day basis. It takes like 30 seconds.
I'm just imagining, hey, future me, how are you? Let's have a chat.
Yeah.
You should do this. This is off the book now. This is on to what you're doing on YouTube, where I'm so jealous of you with nearly 250,000 people following you on YouTube. But it's rightfully so. You talk about having a year in review. Can we take a second and talk about your year in review? And we'll also link to this video because I think this is really cool. Going back through the nuggets of the year to kind of pick stuff out. Tell me about the year in review.
Well, the idea being that a review helps us see how aligned we are with the life that we're actually living, which the whole premise of the book is that the purpose of your money is to create the life that you want your whole life. And so that's why even though I talk about money, I spend a lot of time helping people really look at how do you create a meaningful and fulfilling life. So when we do the year in review, yes, we look at the numbers, but that's not actually where we start. We start with how you felt about the life that you lived over the past year, because it's very easy to get into living your life on default. And I heard this for the first time from Michael Hyatt, living the same year over and over and calling it a life. Most of us, if we think about that, we don't want to do that. We want each year to be new, to be more fulfilling, where we become kind of deeper versions of ourselves and have even better experiences and a wider variety of experiences. So when we do our year in review, we look back and we say, what's working, right? What are we doing really well in our lives? What do we love? What's not working? And that not working question helps us set more meaningful goals, both financially and when it comes to our own lives. And a new question I added this year is, how did I live in alignment with my values this year? And the idea there is to have us start setting wins and accomplishments that aren't just about external accolades. Because I've got a lot of those external accolade accomplishments. And I can tell you over time, the novelty wears off. And what you're left with is the life that you lived when in between those big milestones. And that's the life you're going to look back on when you're old. So I want you to review your life every single year so that you're not getting complacent and taking it for granted.
Wow. Speed up by slowing down. I mean, truly slowing down and living between the notes instead of more notes, you know?
Yeah. I always say life is the thing that happens between your goals.
Right. Totally is. I want to end with just a brief tour of one section of your book, which is the 7 money capacities. And often I don't like to do this on one hand because you dive so deeply into these, but I want people to feel them and what they are. So our audience gets some idea of these different capacities. And if people read the work, they kind of have an introduction to it as well. So I feel like it works for everybody. But the 7 money capacities, if you could just give me a few lines on each of these. The first one is understanding. What do you mean by that?
Well, we need to understand money so that we can make good financial decisions. It's also recognizing that personal finance is constantly changing. Like, I'm telling you this as a banking and finance attorney that regulated the financial industry here in the US on a federal level, that banks are always coming up with new things, right? Remember, like, Bitcoin wasn't a thing. And so understanding is important because as these markets continue to evolve, you want your understanding to be able to evolve with it so that you're always able to make good decisions.
It's funny because so many people think, well, I don't have a head for money. I don't have but you have a head for the thing, and money's going to get you there. So just the basics. And I feel like it's not as hard as we sometimes make it.
Yeah. And you don't need to know everything. This is the other thing. Like,
I think we get freaked out.
The things that hedge fund managers need to understand is very different from the things that like a regular person needs to understand, you know?
I agree. Second is deciding.
So making good financial decisions. The decisions that we make really do impact our trajectory. So many people get this feeling of powerlessness, like they don't have a choice, like they're just along for the ride, not recognizing that the better your decisions, the better your outcomes and the better your overall quality of life.
I love that. Just you are controlling the flow of the river. And I felt powerful reading that section. Like, no, it is me. You know, we started off here talking about the system and how rigged it is, but it still is about me, and which is awesome. Third is earning.
Well, you got to make money in order to have money, but earning is a skill that we can improve over time. And this is something that I've learned in my own life. Too often we approach jobs and job searching and career from the perspective of what are they willing to pay me? But I say you should approach it from the what do I want to earn? And then how do I become the person that earns that money?
Oh, begin with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. That's fabulous. Fourth is having.
So having so many people, especially when they get a windfall, they're like, what do I do with this money? And I'm like, just have it. You don't have to do anything with it. And having is an essential skill because in order to build wealth, you have to have the skill of having money and not touching it. And also having money and waiting and making a sound financial decision rather than knee-jerk reactions, like doing things like pulling money out of your 401k to pay off debt or taking a home equity loan, which is a secured debt to pay off a credit card, which is unsecured debt. So you're putting your home at risk for no reason. That's because people can't just like sit and have money and not do anything with it.
Isn't it wild that in some cases like that, and you know, you talked about inflationary times and the stock market being all over the place last year, that this is one of the only fields where doing nothing is often the right answer, Scarlett.
Right. And there's so much emotion caught up in it.
Sure.
And we do not make good decisions from a place of negative emotion. And that is why I spent so much time talking about what we typically consider as like negative things like debt, and then showing people how it's actually important to appreciate your debt, get to a place of neutrality about your debt so that you can make better decisions. Next is spending. So we're talking about making better decisions, knowing when to spend, when not to spend, building those quality spending habits that make it really easy to stick to your spending plan and hit your overall savings goals, right? The thing that often derails us is we have a plan and we can't stick to it. And I wanted spending in there because I wanted people to understand that this is a skill that you actually have to practice. It's not about willpower. It's figuring out spending habits that you can sustain naturally.
What I like about this discussion, Scarlett, is, almost 12 years of this, I've done a lot of interviews. So many of us begin with the spending plan. They begin there. And for you, spending is step 5 of 7. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the fact that you have this funnel before you get to spending, now spending really isn't its place. Like it's a function of all these other things that are above it. I feel like you're much more likely to succeed if you put it at number 5 than if you just go, oh, everybody says I need a budget.
Yeah. And also spending actually does mean spending. not like not spending, which is how we usually think about it. So to me, spending money well means that you actually get to spend on the thing that matters to you, and you should be savoring those purchases. Too often we spend money and it's basically wasted because you feel guilty about it. You kind of resent the purchase after you made the purchase. And so it's like a lose-lose. Like, no, when you spend money, you spend that money and you enjoy it. You're not going to beat yourself up about it, even if it was a wouldn't do that again, as I like to call it, something that you don't want to do in the future. You can still savor the decisions that you made and make the decision to do something different going forward.
You said the word losing, and that's the title of the 6th money capacity. What's losing doing in here?
Yeah, losing is my favorite because people make really bad financial decisions because of loss aversion, right? Because we are scared to lose. And so we make decisions to try to just never lose money. Now, when it comes to money, that's impossible because just the nature of investing always involves some amount of risk. And investing is non-negotiable unless you happen to make so much money that you can just literally save your way to millions of dollars, which most of us do not, right? We're talking someone who has like a multi-million-dollar business can just save their way to be a millionaire. The rest of us, we need to invest. And investing involves some amount of risk, and your investments will go up and they'll come down and they'll go up. And in the downs, people are so upset about losing money that they lock in those losses.
It's
right.
So
we make
irrational
decisions, but also we have to take some amount of risk in life to do things differently. So when we buy a house and we have a job, now we're invested, but we don't like this job and we don't like this city. But hey, it costs us so much money to come here. Well, I don't want to lose that money. I don't want it to be a waste. So I'm just going to stick in this house I don't like, in this city I don't like, in this job I don't like, because I don't want to quote unquote lose money. When in reality, it's like, okay, well, that was a lesson. I'm just going to pick myself up and I'm going to do what I need to do because the life that I want is more important than the money I already spent. And I'd rather lose money and gain the life I desire, right? Those are the thoughts we need to have to make our highest level decisions.
I feel like we undervalue really the shortness of our life when we do that. When we overvalue, I'm going to stick in this situation longer because I'm risk averse. And you're like, why would you do that when we have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring? Like, let's keep moving. It's so frustrating to see.
Yeah. People ask me all the time. Yeah. One question I get a lot is, how do you feel about the fact that you took out almost $200,000 worth of student loans to become a lawyer and you're not a lawyer anymore? And I'm like, I feel great. Nothing is lost, right? I am still a lawyer. I still have all the skills that I learned. I still have the law degree. And what I paid for was what I got, that education. How I use it after that is up to me. So I got all the value that I paid for.
Last on our list, sadly, it's last on our list because I want to have this conversation forever, is growing.
Growing is, I thought about putting it first because it is essential. That is the money that we are squirreling away for future us. The time when we either can't work anymore or don't want to work anymore. And I want us to get used to thinking of those later years of our lives and thinking about what kind of lifestyle we want to have in retirement, because that impacts what we do when we're younger. So you have to learn how to grow your money because, like I said earlier, it's really challenging to just, shovel your way to savings, right? You are making a regular income and you want to save your way to $2 million. Well, you're going to have to. It's really hard. You can, right? Because there are people out there making $500,000, $1 million, even as employees, right? Sure. But why would you make your life any harder than it needs to be? There are great ways to grow your income that are not attached to your labor, but also so that that income can be preserved to last you the rest of your life and to create the legacy that you want. That is an essential function of managing money well.
The book is called It's Not About the Money, A Proven Path to Building Wealth and Living the Rich Life You Deserve. And it came out yesterday, everybody. It's like the perfect Valentine's Day gift, Scarlett.
I know. It's my love gift to the whole world.
It's fantastic. And people can give it to their loved ones. Give it to themselves. Self-love. Practice self-love. I would be remiss also. And by the way, we'll link to the book on our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com. If you're walking the dog or you're on your commute, for those people that still commute, I'd be remiss. One last question. If I didn't ask you about what's going on at One Big Happy Life, what's coming up?
Well, the book is out, so definitely go get that. And so then next week, book study actually starts. So you can join me live. It's a bonus that comes along with the book, and we will get together and discuss everything inside of the book together as a community. So you're not going to want to miss it. So just go ahead and order your copy now.
Oh, that's
so that
fabulous.
you have it when we start next week.
It's like an accountability circle.
Mm-hmm.
That's fabulous. Scarlett, so great to finally meet you. I've been such a fan of your work. Thanks for hanging out with us in Mom's Basement, talking money.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to have had this opportunity because I've been following your work for years as well.